Good morning and welcome to the Americom orientation. I appreciate you being part of the Americom team. This morning we will go over some items that I think are important to be part of Americom, starting with the culture of Americom. With that, we'll also lead into some of the more pertinent things that you'll be dealing with daily in your job in the way of safety, and that's part of this orientation. One of the things that we've established as a company is a set of core values. Those core values are very important to us and a part of our culture at Americom. And leading with the integrity. Integrity is encompassing of a lot of different things. Honesty obviously falls of integrity, but it's how you show up for work and how you respond to one another, ourselves, our customers, and to each other. We look for employees with strong work ethic. People who show up prior to their job, time that they need to schedule to come to work, and are ready, willing, and able to work, and take pride in their work. And they believe that, a strong work ethic is continuing to set high standards and values and services not only for your team but for the customers as well. Individualized service. We want to look at each customer and we want to treat them as if they are our only customer. And with that, we extend our services and products to our customers, and we want to make sure that we look at each customer as if they're that important, that they're really our only customer. And then we want to empower our employees. We want to make sure that you're empowered to do your job. We want to make sure that you're empowered to be safe. We want to make sure that you're also empowered to expand your knowledge as far as you're working here at Americom. And then empower employees that you work with on your team as well. Through the part of the biggest culture thing that we have is our diversity. We're very diverse in the talents and resources that we have here at Americom, and we want to make sure that you're part of that as well. We want somebody that's very flexible and adapts to situations, but has multiple talents and embraces the talents of other members of the team. And then teamwork. Obviously that falls within being part of a team, and we want to make sure that you understand that the talents of multiples are of more value than the individual, and that the individual should bring those talents to the team. To get deeper into the culture of Americom, one of the things that we have is kind of set up some culture statements. And we want to make sure that you understand what our culture is about, because every company has a culture, and you play a very important role in that culture, being a member of the Americom team. So, I'll go with these. You can read through these. I'm not going to read each one, but I think these are important in aspects of how you conduct yourself daily, and then how you interact with other members of the team, customers, and things. With that, I'd like to introduce you to Shannon Bennett. Shannon is our safety director, and want to make sure that he gives his important message to you as well as part of this orientation. Shannon?
Thank you, Pat. My name is Shannon Bennett. I'm the safety manager here at Americom. Welcome. This is our safety orientation for all of our new hire employees. Today I'm going to be discussing all of the basics and highlights of the type of work that Americom conducts, and I'm going to be covering all the important safety policies and safety topics that are specific to the work that Americom does. So this is my contact information. Anybody is welcome to call me or email me at any time. As you're watching this video, feel free to take a picture of the slide so you have my information. You can plug it into my phone. I'm here as a resource for you, so again, please feel free to call me. If you ever have any questions or concerns, or you see any safety issues that you'd like to bring to my attention. Along with my personal cell phone and desk number, we have the injury accident hotline number. That's important to have and know as well, and I'll discuss that here in a little bit. But anytime we have an injury or an accident, you'll be required to report that through the injury and accident hotline. So our safety policy and goals. All safety or accidents and injuries are preventable. And I would encourage you to work safely, as I believe that working safely allows us to work more efficiently and more productively and is faster. And so I've coined the term safe is fast, and I believe that if we're all safe out there in the work field, then we can prevent all of these incidents from happening. The other aspects of our policies and goals is that everyone returns home without injury each day. Everyone is empowered to prevent incidents, and what that means is you as an employee have the power and ability to interject or stop work if you see something that is unsafe, or if you see something and you can prevent it, you have that authority and power to do that. Our goal is to have a safety culture that will ensure the safety of our employees, subcontractors, customers, and the general public. So again, without saying, safety is very important to Americom and is our top priority, and we want to make sure everybody's safe and goes home safely every day. So I'll give you a little bit of I'll start with an introduction to safety. Safety culture, the definition of that is the beliefs, customs, arts, etc. of a particular society, group, place, or time, a way of thinking, behaving, or working that exists in a place or organization. Why is it important to have a safety culture? I believe that safety should be at the forefront of everybody's mind every day, and it's not just about Americom, but it's about you and making sure, again, that you go home safe to your families every day. If you can't provide for your families or earn an income, if you're injured and you're laid up and you can't work, I'll just ask you, how is that going to affect your personal life? How are you going to be able to pay your bills? So it's important that we all have a healthy safety culture, and that we've always got that at the forefront of our minds. So just to give you some statistics about how important safety is. In Utah so far this year, there have been 8 occupational related deaths in Utah, 5 of which have been in construction. 2 of those have been from falls, 2 from excavations and cave-ins, and 1 was an electrocution. According to OSHA, nearly 24,000 workers are injured in every 8-hour workday. Almost 17 of these workers die every day. And these injuries cost the workforce nationwide billions of dollars. And you can see here on the bottom, I've provided some statistics that, in 1997, there was a recorded and documented $127 billion loss due to injuries. And then in 2006, $291 billion loss due to injuries. So that's about $5.6 billion per week. So you can see that, this is an issue that spans throughout all types of working environments, and safety is a very important thing that I want you to be conscientious of and make a very important part of your daily routine and activities here at Americom. So here we have the safety triangle, and I want you to take note of the arrow on the left that's leading from the bottom, pointing up. You have 3 different levels to the safety triangle. The first is your engineering controls. The second is your administrative and workplace controls, and then the third is your personal protective equipment. What this arrow is indicating is that the effectiveness of each one of these 3 items in the safety triangle. So a lot of people might say that, you know, wearing your personal protective equipment, your hard hat, your safety glasses, your gloves, your boots, that's going to be the most effective, but actually that's the least effective. The most effective is your engineering controls. You know, an example of that might be if you're in a confined space, you're down in a hole and it's you know 140 degrees, we would need to bring in engineering controls to reduce that temperature in that hole so that it's safe to work in that environment. Administrative controls would be same scenario. You're down in a hole, it's very hot. Maybe we can only leave you or have a worker down in that hole for 30 minutes. So our policy or the way to administrate and work through that is that we rotate employees out every 30 minutes just to make sure that you stay hydrated, you're not getting overwhelmed from the heat, and et cetera, so on and so forth. And then again, the last part of this triangle is your personal protective equipment. The personal protective equipment is meant to provide protection to you as the employee for those unforeseen incidences that you don't know is going to happen. So say you're using a drill or a power tool and a piece of metal flies up and hits your safety glasses. You know, none of us is going to know that when that's going to happen. And so that personal protective equipment is meant to protect you for those unknown situations that you really have no control over. So we're going to get into some of the policies, Americom policies regarding safety. So, you know, this is kind of a serious subject, but it does need to be discussed and talked about. Grounds for removal from the project. You know, this is your fair warning. Failure to follow Americom's safety policies and our OSHA standards can be cause for removal from a project. Failure to wear your PPE, fighting, weapons possession, and alcohol or drug use or alcohol or drug use possession on a company project. Fit for duty, your emergency notification information. Basically, that means, you know, do we have your personal contact information? Do we have somebody that we can notify in case of an emergency? If a friend, a family member, does HR have this information? If not, please contact Becky Bowman and make sure that she has that information. Make your supervisor aware of any medical problems. So if you have diabetes or asthma, or if you have any required medications, make sure they're aware of that and they know what those requirements are. So if something happens to you, then they can help you and they can better understand your situation. You know, we're not saying you should tell everybody, but just make sure your supervisor is aware if you have any special needs such as that. Fatigue management and hydration. You know, we are working outdoors quite a bit, so you know, make sure you're staying hydrated and you come to work well rested and prepared for the day. Make sure you're bringing your lunch. Sometimes we don't always have the ability to leave and go for lunch, so just make sure you're planning ahead and you're prepared for the elements that we face here at Americom. Our alcohol and drug usage is prohibited. We are committed to maintaining a safe and drug-free workplace, and just be aware that we do conduct post-incident, random, and for-cause drug testing, drug and alcohol testing. So I mentioned this earlier on in the beginning. Before you start work, identify and discuss all safety hazards present on the job. So, if you're not sure what those are, make sure you ask your supervisor. Develop a plan, conduct a toolbox talk, and complete the JHA forms. We have a job hazard analysis form that we require you to complete and fill out before you start any job. And with that, that requires you to identify any of the hazards that may be present on the job, and so that everyone on that project is aware of those hazards, and we can prepare and plan to make that project safe. Make sure you have all your necessary and required personal protective equipment, and I'll go over what that is here in the next few slides. Inspect all equipment and tools for hazards before using. Just know that any damaged or compromised equipment should not be used and should be removed from service until it's fixed and by a certified professional to make those repairs. Discuss emergency action planning. Emergency action planning is, what we're going to do if there's an emergency. Which hospital are we going to go to? Who's our first responders? How are they going to get there? Do we have the ability to communicate? Where's our rally point? Those are all things that need to be discussed at the beginning of each shift, so everybody knows where to go, what to do in the event of emergency. Does everybody know where the first aid kit is located at? And I'll go over the emergency action planning in a little bit more detail here in the next few slides. So the main point here before you start work is, if you're unfamiliar with the work, materials, tools, heavy equipment, or machinery, make sure you consult your supervisor before you start using it. So we just kind of went over this slide, emergency action planning. So I'll just go over it real quick. Ensure you have a site-specific emergency action plan. So again, where's your rally point? Rally point is where is everybody going to meet if there's an emergency? Maybe it's going to be the trucks in the parking lot, or maybe it's going to be the 7-Eleven next door or down the street. Where are we all going to meet if there's an emergency? Where are your exits? So if you're inside a large building and you're pulling cable, and there's a fire in that building, where are your emergency exits? How are you going to get out of that building safely? Do you have the ability to communicate? Do your cell phones work? Do we need radios on this project so that we can communicate? What emergency services are available in your area? Do you have addresses for those services? Do you know where they are? Do you have phone numbers for them? Those are all required to be on the project. And again, you're required to know that information, have it available on the project before you start that work. OSHA requires at least 2 employees to be trained in first aid and CPR in emergencies if no emergency services are available within 15 minutes. So if you're out in the middle of nowhere and you're conducting a job, we've got to have some employees that are trained in CPR and first aid. And again, they've got to know you've got to have an emergency action plan in place in the event there is an emergency. Every truck or project, there must be an OSHA ANSI approved first aid kit available. So whether it's in the truck or in the gang box, it just needs to be there available. Our stop work policy it just says, if you're unfamiliar with what to do, ask your supervisor. Do not use equipment if you have not been trained. So you as an employee, if someone tells you, hey, go move that forklift, or hey, go move that mini excavator, and you've never been trained or you don't know how to operate that equipment, it's your responsibility to make sure you tell your supervisor, hey, I'm not comfortable operating this equipment. I've never done that before. Can you teach me, or can you show me how? And if you're still not comfortable, then you should probably find someone else to operate that machinery. As part of our policies, we want everyone to be aware of all safety hazards in your immediate area and the areas of those working around you. So basically, envision a 30-foot circle around you and everybody else. If somebody's in that 30-foot circle, you have an obligation to watch their back, and they have an obligation to watch yours. So we're constantly trying to be mindful and pay attention to the safety hazards within that 30-foot bubble, so to speak. If you see a hazard, point it out to others. Stop work if you need to. If you see something happening, stop the work. Stop that person. If you perceive there might be a safety issue there, or something's going to happen, there might be an injury, stop it. You have that authority to do so. And OSHA actually has written that into their regulations, that you have that ability to do that. So don't be afraid to take those steps and make that decision if that's what you feel like you need to do. If the work area appears unsafe or you're not sure, clarify with your supervisor. So if you're on a job and you're like, hey, this doesn't really seem right or doesn't really seem safe, clarify and make sure you're comfortable with that work and that project or that work area before you start your work. Again, we want you asking questions, we want you clarifying, we want you to make sure you understand exactly what you're doing. We don't want anybody walking into a job or a project or an assignment blind. If you see unsafe work conditions, any Americom employee is authorized to stop work or task at hand and then notify the supervisor. We want you to, again, stop, clarify, make sure everyone's on the same page, make sure you're comfortable with the work, and then proceed from there. Going back to the safety triangle, maybe you need to implement some engineering controls. Maybe you need to implement some administrative controls, or maybe you recognize, hey, I'm going to need some additional personal protective equipment. So that's what this is talking about. This is our damage prevention policy. This is specific to, if you're working out in the field and you're working in and around utilities. On the left here, we have a color chart that identifies the different types of utilities that we work in and around. So red is electrical, yellow is gas, oil, or steam, orange is communications, blue is potable water, purple reclaimed water, green is sewer or drainage, pink is your survey marks, and white is where we're going to conduct proposed excavations. So we have a policy that says, we obviously will call 811 first before we dig. That's standard practice. You always call the locate services before we dig. We want to know where those utilities are. Common problem solutions, once we've had the locate service come out and mark the utilities, maybe it's still not clear where those utilities are. So some of the ways that we can work around that problem is, we can do hand digging or potholing. So we'll dig down and try to find the utility in a more controlled environment, rather than just getting right in there with a piece of heavy equipment and scooping out a big chunk of soil to find the utility. We'll actually use a shovel and dig down, find the utility, make sure we know exactly where it is before we start or before we continue on with the project. Utility damage prevention, talk to property owners, managers. Is it private property? Sometimes on private property, they're required to locate the utilities, and or we need to talk to the property owner or the property manager to find out exactly where those utilities are on the property. If you do hit a utility, say for example you hit a gas line, that's pretty serious. It depends on the size of the gas line, how much gas is coming out. You could have a very serious situation there where you would need to call 911 and get assistance with maybe evacuating the area. If you hit a high pressurized gas line and gas is dissipating out in the air, and you've got homes surrounding the area, especially if it's wintertime and people's furnaces are on, or they're running a fireplace, you obviously could have an explosion hazard there. So get the emergency responders coming first to help you control that. Then you're going to want to call the utility companies to help you get that utility strike controlled and managed. So again, assess imminent dangers and evaluate whether or not you need to do excavations. And then again, once you've hit a utility, you're required to report that to the injury accident hotline at the number provided there on the screen. And then also you'll need to notify your supervisor and then the safety manager. All damaged property must be reported. So not just utilities. If you're driving a company vehicle or you're using a piece of company equipment and it gets damaged, that all needs to be reported to the injury accident hotline and also to your supervisor and myself, the safety manager. So compliance inspection procedures. So since we are a construction company and we are subject to the OSHA regulations, we could be subject to an OSHA inspection or investigation anytime. And this is our policy on how we're going to work through that process. So what should you do if OSHA shows up on the job? Immediately notify your supervisor, superintendent, foreman, and the safety manager. Do not allow them to walk around the job freely. Advise that you need to obtain your supervisor's permission before you allow them to walk about the project. OSHA is required by law to follow certain procedures as they're doing these inspections. So the first step is they're required to present their credentials. They're required to conduct an opening conference, which is where they'll meet with all of the management team to discuss their concerns. Maybe they received a complaint. So that's the point where they'll bring that complaint forward. And then then once everybody's comfortable with the opening conference, then they'll conduct a walk around. And that's where typically they'll identify any issues or concerns. And then they'll bring those issues or concerns to us at the closing conference. And then issue citations if they feel that's appropriate. But the main point here of this slide is to help you understand that process needs to be a controlled environment by Americom's management team. We don't want an OSHA inspector just showing up and walking around the project without being supervised or escorted on the project. This is important because if that happens, OSHA citations are very expensive. They range from anywhere from $5,000 all the way up to $125,000 for willful or repeated violations. So what are our worksite hazards? OSHA has identified the fatal 4 worksite hazards. Those are falls, electrocutions, caught in or caught between objects. So like, for example, the trench collapsing in on you, getting struck by an object. So like being struck by a vehicle or a piece of equipment or a falling object. Say a hammer falls from the 2nd level down to the level where you're working, and hits you in your hard hat. You may still receive an injury from that struck by injury. Do not enter restricted areas without permission. So if you're on a large project and there's another contractor there and they've got barricades set up and tape, designed to keep people out, make sure you know and understand what you're walking into and you get permission before you enter that restricted work area. Ensure work is stopped before entering that area. You want to make sure if you've got to go into that area that it's safe to do that, and if you need to, get that work stopped to make sure that the work you have to do in that area is conducted safely. Do not work under suspended loads. So if you're working in and around heavy equipment or cranes and they're lifting heavy objects from one place to another, or you're working near a mini excavator, you don't want to be working in or near or around that equipment, or obviously you could be again struck by that object or hit from falling objects. I'm going to play a video real quick of an injury that occurred involving one of these fatal 4 injuries. So here we have a forklift operator that's allowed this person to ride on the back. His load is kind of middle of the forklift, and he loses control of it, and then this lady tries to stop it, and it comes down on top of her. And so that is a caught between type injury, and just a bad situation all around. The point in showing you that video is obviously, if you're around heavy equipment, just know and understand that you're not going to be able to prevent a large piece of equipment from moving like that. You saw how the woman walked up and tried to stop or hold the forklift down. Just don't do that. The other thing that I wanted to discuss on that is this is a perfect example of how we need to control our work zones. You know, there needs to be someone in charge of that. They need to control that. You know, if they see unsafe things happening, like we've already discussed, that person should be in charge of that operation and the movement of that materials on the forklift. And if they see things that are unsafe, for example, the woman or the gentleman riding on top, or the woman getting too close to the forklift, they need to stop that work. They need to control it. They need to keep people back. You know, they need to evaluate and identify better ways to move that material from point A to point B. So again, continuation of construction's fatal 4 hazards. Out of 4,674 workers, fatalities in the private industry in the calendar year of 2017, 971 or 20% were in construction. That is 1 in 5 worker deaths in 2017 were in construction. The leading cause of private sector worker deaths, excluding highway collisions in the construction industry, were falls, followed by struck by objects, electrocution, and caught in between, as we just saw in the last video. These fatal 4 were responsible for more than half, or 59%, of the construction worker deaths in 2017. So some pretty compelling statistics there. And you know, this is the data that OSHA uses to identify what those fatal 4 hazards are. So going into our personal protective equipment slide here, all employees are required to have the following personal protective equipment at all times. So you're required to have a hard hat, a safety vest, safety glasses with side protection, and hearing protection on the job. All of those 4 things, those are provided by Americom when you're hired and at no cost to you. The other personal protective equipment that you might need are, you know, are you prepared for the weather? Are you prepared for the heat or the cold? You know, do you have water, food, sunscreen, clothing? Obviously, those things will not be provided by Americom. Our policy is that you must wear long pants, no shorts, and wear a long or short sleeve shirt and no tank tops. Footwear must be durable leather with slip resistant sole. Some jobs require steel-toed boots, so you'll need to ask your supervisor if the project you're working on requires steel-toed boots. But Americom doesn't have a policy requiring you to wear steel-toed boots. It's a good idea. I recommend it, but bare minimum, you just need to wear a durable leather boot that has goes up over the top of the ankle that can protect your ankle. So some ways that we can prevent some of our ergonomic injuries are by conducting warm-ups, stretching, and flexing. We've implemented a stretching program to try to prevent injuries associated with repetitive motions. All work performed should utilize safe ergonomics and lifting practices. So try to do 3 to 5 short stretches per day. You know, stretch before you start work, stretch, you know, middle of the day or when you get the opportunity, you know, stretch after lunch, and then stretch after the work day's done. You know, the stretching and flexing, that's going to help you prevent injuries down the road and throughout the day. You know, again, going back to our safety triangle, if you're doing a lot of repetitive motions and you start to feel a strain, you know, we can implement administrative controls to try to manage those type of repetitive motion injuries. So after prolonged static or holding a posture such as driving to the job site or after doing a lot of repetitive job tasks, these are the types of injuries that can occur. So, you know, again, you're lifting with your back instead of your legs. You want to make sure you have good posture when you're lifting something, especially, you know, a heavy object over 50 pounds. If you're lifting something heavy, you know, and you're worried about, you know, maybe this could hurt your back or it's in an awkward position, you know, find someone to help you move that rather than just try to move it yourself. Stretching should occur after taking lunch break and before resuming work tasks. After 4 to 6 hours or during the last part of your day, you should break to stretch a minimum of 2 times. This is because there is more muscle fatigue at the end of the workday. When your muscles are fatigued, they are more prone to injury. Listen to your body. If you are more sore than normal in a certain area, then stretch the area more often. Supervisors are required to be familiar with and ensure the stretching program is utilized where site-specific requirements are in place. So you might go out onto a job site, and a lot of large construction companies require their employees to do just this. They require them to warm up, stretch, and flex, before, during, and after each workday. So, just wanted to make you aware of that and just be prepared for that. It's just a good habit to get into. So here's an example of the wrong way to lift, or the right way to lift. So on the left, you see the guy trying to lift that box with his back. He's going to strain his back muscles and potentially receive an injury from doing that. The right way, on the right, is he's squatted down. He's using his quads and his glutes to lift that box. He's got his back straight. There's a nice straight line there on from the top of his spine, his neck, all the way down to his butt. So these are some of the causes for poor lifting techniques, or causes for injuries, or poor lifting techniques. There are causes for back injuries, leg injuries. So again, use proper lifting techniques, and again, get help if you need it. We also have a heat and cold stress plan. While working in hot weather conditions, the human body may not be able to maintain a normal temperature just by sweating. If this happens, heat-related illnesses may occur. The most common health problems caused by hot work environments include heat stroke, heat exhaustion, heat cramps, heat rash, and dehydration. So some prevention methods include, acclimation, or acclimate to the area that you're working in. Again, we talked about engineering controls. Maybe we need to get some fans or evaporative coolers in there. Safe work practices. For employees working outdoors or working indoors without heat, take scheduled breaks in warm areas. Again, listen to your body and make sure you're not exerting yourself or overwhelming yourself. Ensure there's plenty of water to drink or fluids with electrolytes, and take breaks as needed. Immediately report any problems to your supervisors. Supervisors should consider scheduling work around weather conditions. So, let's work smart, not hard. Personal protective equipment is an important factor in preventing cold stress-related injuries and illnesses. Employees should adhere to the following recommendations when dressing for work in a cold environment. So if we're working in a cold environment, we want to wear layered clothing. Do not wear tight clothing. Loose clothing provides better ventilation. We want to wear a hat or a hoodie. Up to 40% of your body heat can be lost through the top of your head if you're not wearing any sort of hat or insulated cap. Wear insulated work boots or footwear. Keep a change of clothing in your vehicle or with you on the job in case your clothes become wet. If your clothes become wet, then you could be subject to hypothermia, and that obviously poses a lot of serious hazards and problems at that point. Supervisors shall ensure all employees have received heat cold stress training prior to working in such conditions. So if you're a supervisor, just know that, make sure you're talking about this as part of your toolbox, your morning JHA toolbox talk. Hey, it's going to be cold today. We got to make sure, everyone's got the right personal protective clothing. And if someone doesn't, make sure that they get it, or they obtain it before they come to the job. Our hazard communication, that's a term you'll hear in the safety regulations. It's also known as HAZCOM. It's a globally harmonized system. It's called the GHS system. Ensures information about chemicals, including information and ingredients, can be universally communicated. So basically what that is it's talking about the safety data sheets. So those are the sheets that a manufacturer of a chemical will put out, and and pre-identify all the safety hazards or precautions you should take while handling that chemical or that material. SDS sheets are available here at Americom in the main offices, and should be available on the job site, if you are working with those types of chemicals. So safety data sheets, they provide all information necessary to safely handle a particular chemical, must be readily accessible to all employees using a hazardous chemical, and any chemical identified with the label that states danger, caution, or warning must have a safety data sheet. So again, this is our HAZCOM, and if we're introducing or working with a chemical that we're not familiar with, make sure you take the time to review those safety data sheets so you're educated and prepared, and you have the proper and necessary personal protective equipment while you're handling that chemical. Okay, now we're going to get into our electrical safety and GFCIs. So recognize hazardous energy sources. So if we're working in and around electrical or hazardous energy sources, point that out to everyone there on the crew. Make sure they're aware of it. OSHA requires that GFCIs are used, inspected, and tested. Electrical cord inspection and use. Damaged and defective electrical equipment should not be used and should follow proper procedures. Locks, tags, lockout, tagout, control hazard energy sources. So if you can control that energy source before you start the work, what that means is we would want you to lock it out, tag it out, shut it down, de-energize that energy source before you go in and perform the work you need to perform, so that project or that job site is safe for you and everybody there. Overhead line protection, make sure you're pointing out overhead power lines to everybody there on the crew. Again, that should be discussed as part of your JHA job site safety toolbox meeting first thing in the morning. Identify the clearance distances and shielding. If you need any shielding in place, you can set up barricades to keep people from encroaching or getting too close to those overhead power lines. And then what are our accidental contact procedures? What are you going to do if somebody does come in contact with an electrical hazard? So I'm going to show you a video of how serious electricity is and how dangerous it can be, and why it's so important for you to take these precautions when working in or near electrical hazards. So you see here these guys moving this metal scaffolding, and they're oblivious to the electrical lines up here on the top left corner of your screen. They come in contact with it, and then they're immediately energized. And this debunks any myth or thought anyone might have had that you can just let go when you come in contact with electrical energies. You can see here that these guys were not able to let go just by nature of gravity and all the elements in play here, that their bodies just succumb to the electrical, and then they eventually detach. But you can see on the bottom left corner here, the two gentlemen that were attached, they're getting the brunt of this electrical incident, and you can see that there was smoke starting to emit from that incident. So again, you're not going to be able to just let go of an electrical cord or metal object if it comes in contact with an electrical hazard. So just again, these are all the reasons why we need to be prepared and pre-plan and try to recognize and identify these electrical hazards before we go into a job, before we start a project. On this particular incident, again, we could have controlled that a little better. There could have been a fifth person there watching, observing, and directing these four men when they're moving this scaffolding, pointing out that electrical hazard above, and communicating. If maybe that person in control didn't feel like it was safe, they could have put some shielding in place, or made the decision, hey, this isn't safe, let's just tear down this scaffolding and move it piece by piece. So again, we want you to work safely. Even if it requires a little extra work, it's as long as it's protecting everybody and it's safer. Then again, safe is fast, and we're gonna, the goal here is that everybody goes home safely at the end of the day. So continuation of electrical, which includes hand and power tools. So a lot of our power tools we use are, involve electricity. Some are battery operated. Some are, they plug into an outlet on the wall. But in addition to the electrical hazards, we want to make sure that all of the safety guards are in place. They're not removed. They're not pinned up or anything like that. So to protect users from shock and burns, electrical tools must have a 3-wire cord with a ground. They must be plugged into a grounded receptacle, be double insulated, or be powered by a low voltage isolation transformer. A third prong, if you see an extension cord or a piece of equipment or a hand tool that is missing the third prong, it should not be used. It should be removed from service immediately. That grounding feature on that equipment is there for a reason. If that's been removed and you try to use that equipment, then there's essentially no way to protect you from those electrical hazards in place. The grounding system is not in place. And you could be energized, you could be electrocuted. So jumping to pneumatic tools, just know that a safety clip or retainer must be installed to prevent attachments such as chisels on a chipping hammer from being ejected during tool operation. So the clip or retainer, that's just basically a safety guard. But a lot of your drills that you use, they have when you release the trigger, that automatically shuts down the drill, and that's actually a safety feature that's built into the drill. Same with the saw. It's got a saw guard that comes down, protects that blade from coming in contact with the skin. So the point being here is any safety clip or retainer, they must be used, they must be installed. Any heavy machinery that comes with or has guarding, that needs to be used as well and is in place before the equipment is used. Moving on, continuation. If an air hose is more than a 1/2 inch in diameter, a safety excess flow valve must be installed at the source of the air supply to reduce pressure in case of hose failure. Pneumatic power tools must be secured to the hose with a whip check device to prevent accidental disconnection. So most of our air hoses and pneumatic air tools have that feature built into the hose. It's a little clip that clips into that tool that you're using. You don't ever want to use an air hose that doesn't have that on there for that reason. That air hose could come off and start whipping around and hit you or hit somebody else on the project. Powder actuated tools operate like a loaded gun and must be treated with extreme caution. You're technically required by OSHA to be trained and certified before using powder actuated tools. So again, if you haven't had that training, notify your supervisor, make them aware that you haven't been trained on how to use those tools. Proof of training must be with your operator at all times. So similar to like a driver's license or forklift certification, you've got to have that certification that you know how to use that powder actuated tool. Again, the forces generated from that tool are similar to a firearm. If you use that tool incorrectly, say you're using a Hilti gun and it punches, you're punching nails into concrete. If it's not used correctly, that nail could easily go through soft tissue or bone and cause very severe injuries. Moving on to ladder safety. We want you to choose the right ladder for the job and inspect those ladders daily. Damaged ladders must be removed from service. So if you see any ladders that are bent or dented or don't seat properly, they're out of balance, they need to be removed, and you need to get a different ladder. As you're using the ladder, you need to maintain 3 points of contact when using. So what that means is you have 2 feet and 1 hand on the ladder, or 2 hands and 1 foot. Secure the ladder. We must have 3 feet above any landing. So if you're using just a regular ladder that props up against a building or a platform, there needs to be 3 feet above that platform that you're accessing per OSHA regulations. Always face the ladder when ascending and descending. You never want to walk backwards down the ladder. Don't reach out past the rungs of the ladder. Get down and move the ladder if necessary. So if you're on the ladder, the rule of thumb is if your belt buckle or your belly button extends out past the outer rail to either side of the ladder, then you're outreaching and you're putting yourself at risk for a fall or injury. So just, again, slow down, take your time, get down, move that ladder if you need to. The ladder must be rated for the intended load, so that's combined weight. So for example, if you're a 250-pound man, but you're on only a ladder that's rated for 200 pounds, then you've got to get a different ladder. You've got to get a ladder that's rated for not only your body weight, but the weight of the material that you're working with or using. If you're working in and around ladders, you want to prevent pedestrians from walking under or near ladders. So if you need to, barricade off the area or block off the area to keep people from walking around the ladder, then do so. We don't, that's meant to avoid anybody from bumping into the ladder, and causing it to fall out from under you, or from, materials dropping and hitting anybody below the work area that you're, or the area where you're working on the ladder. You cannot step or use the top 2 rungs of the ladder. Those are off limits. Obviously, our center of balance gets out of alignment if you're up on those top 2 rungs. So it's basic physics. If all your weight's on top of the ladder and you move one way or the other, it just becomes a pivot point, and that ladder will just tip and fall out from under you. I'm going to show you a video here real quick of what I'm talking about, just why it's important to use ladders safely. So here we have a multiple level project. We got people working below and we got people working above. I want you to pay attention to this gentleman right here with the plans. Here he's carrying a set of plans up the ladder and he loses his balance and falls. So pretty serious injury there. If everybody noticed, his arms were straight up in the air when he landed. That's an indicator that he was immediately knocked unconscious and likely suffered pretty severe internal injuries, if not head injuries. If you notice, when he came down, he landed on his shoulder blades and his back and his head. So the point being here with this video is, again, we want you to use ladders safely, but never carry anything up the ladder. Use a helper. So if you're working on a ladder and you're working with materials, we want you to ascend to the work area where you're going to be using the ladder, and then have someone lift the materials up to you. Have them hand the materials to you rather than you try to carry those materials up yourself. Some ways that we can do that is we can use ropes. Somebody on the next level could be lifting that material up to you with a rope. But again, we never want you to try to lift that material up the ladder by yourself. And same, if you're using, say it's a long 2x12 or something to that effect, and we don't want you using multiple ladders with multiple people on the ladder and then trying to lift that material up into place. We need to find another means of getting that material to the area where we're working on that ladder. So fall protection. This slide covers the OSHA regulations as to when you need fall protection. So when do you need fall protection? So OSHA says in the construction industry, if you're more than 6 feet above the ground or any working area and it says you're not protected by a system of guardrails or safety nets. So if you're up on a second level and there's no guardrails that would prevent you from falling, then you need to have fall protection, or you need to wear fall protection. And I'll explain what that is here in just a second. Or there needs to be safety nets. So safety nets are objects or safety devices that extend out past the platform and are designed to catch you in the event you fall off that platform. So again, you must be tied off above 6 feet. You need to wear a body harness. You need to inspect your harness daily and make sure it's not damaged. And if it is damaged, it must be removed from service. You make sure you're always connected before starting your work. So if there's no other guardrails or safety nets in place, then you need to wear a harness. The harness needs to have a lanyard connected to some sort of device that will prevent you from falling. So a fall line, or sometimes they'll put out a cable that'll extend out from one anchorage point to the other, or maybe you're tying off to a steel I-beam, something to that effect. So the lanyard needs to be connected to some sort of solid object that's going to prevent you from falling. So what to do after a fall? It only takes a short time for the harness to restrict blood flow, circulation, which can lead to unconsciousness or even death. OSHA requires employers to have a plan if fall protection is in use. What will your plan be? Discuss daily. So again, this is something that should be discussed as part of your JHA toolbox safety talk. If you know going into the job that there's fall hazards and you need to wear fall protection, OSHA requires you to have a plan in place in the event there is a fall. How are you going to get that person down once that person does fall? We obviously can't just have that person hanging there. So, are we going to use ladders to get the person down? Are we going to use a scissor lift? Are we going to use a forklift? How are we going to get that person down? That plan needs to be discussed and designed before the work begins. I'm going to show you another video here of how important fall protection is and how it can save someone's life. So here we have a gentleman up here, you can see on the top right, that's operating a boom lift. And you can't really see him right now. He'll come into picture here in just a minute. But he loses control of this boom lift, and he actually gets ejected out of this boom lift. So the only thing that saved this gentleman's life, I believe that this person would have received fatal injuries had he not been wearing fall protection. You see here, he's trying, I'm not sure what he's doing or what he's trying to get to. Maybe this power pole here on the right. But you'll see here, he tries to lower the boom on the lift and then loses control of it. So this guy, he's alive, he's still conscious, he's still moving. He's definitely going to be sore in the morning, but that fall protection saved his life. So, again, that he was probably 20, 30 feet in the air. He's required to have fall protection while operating this boom lift, and that today, in this particular incident, saved his life. These crew members will go over and help him get down here. But you can kind of see here, I'm not sure if they even had a plan on how they're going to get him down, but another gentleman lowers the boom the rest of the way and they get him down safely. But people were kind of standing around there wondering, I think they were in shock and not sure of what to do. Okay, so moving on, we're going to talk about heavy equipment operations. Heavy equipment is our backhoes, our mini excavators, our large trucks, dump trucks, mud trucks, anything that's classified as heavy equipment is going to be, probably most of our commercial vehicles, or not probably, but will be all of our commercial vehicles. You know, anything that has a very high weight rating. So do not operate vehicles in reverse without with an obstructed rear view unless it has a reverse signal alarm capable of being heard above ambient noise levels, or a signal observer, or use a signal observer indicates that it's safe to move the equipment. So signal observer is just a spotter. You know, you're basically recruiting someone to help you move that heavy equipment. You know, be an extra set of eyes and ears. You know, if you need to move a piece of heavy equipment, you know, that person's going to help you be aware of blind spots. You know, you want to make sure you understand and know what your blind spots are in that heavy equipment. And I'll show you a slide here in a second that shows you how big some of those blind spots can be. Make eye contact with the operator when entering their work area. You know, make sure if you're moving heavy equipment, you're working with somebody and you're making eye contact. You know, maybe you need to use hand signals or radios to communicate effectively. But make sure you've got a plan in place there when you're moving that equipment. Only use equipment for its intended purposes. When using heavy equipment, you want to maintain a minimum 10-foot safe work distance from electrical lines. That's OSHA regulation. You can actually be cited for operating heavy equipment within that 10 feet of electrical lines. Again, use a spotter whenever necessary when moving heavy equipment. If no spotter is available, then use the GOAL principle. GOAL stands for get out and look. So if you've got to move a dump truck or a mini excavator, before you start operating that, get out of the truck or the equipment, walk around the entire piece of equipment and make sure there's no objects or hazards or anything or you know, workers in that area that could be injured from movement of that heavy equipment. So here is a schematic that demonstrates the blind spots for a Ford 880 dump truck. So this is looking bird's eye view, looking down on the dump truck. You can see the front axle up at the top and then the two rear axles at the bottom. If you look at the center of the schematic, the center point is where the driver would sit, and you can see all the dark gray area is the blind spot where the driver cannot immediately see. And then behind the truck, you can obviously see the blind spots increase. The yellow highlighted area is what the driver can see through his rear view mirrors. So you can see there's a lot of blind spots here. The scale here is in meters. So working from the driver's seat to the left, you've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 meters. So for that first 3 meters, the driver can't see below the door or even, you know, what's near or under the truck. So that's a blind spot. He can't see in front of the truck up to about, you know, probably 8 meters in front of him. So again, if you've got a truck with a lot of blind spots like this, make sure you use a spotter. I'm going to play a video that demonstrates, you know, how to properly move heavy equipment.
Did you realize backing accidents are the leading cause for all DOT vehicle accidents, including single and tandem dump trucks, which the majority of you will be driving, as well as tractors with lowboy trailers and even pickup trucks. Backing is one of the more difficult vehicle maneuvers to master, especially with larger type vehicles. It shouldn't be taken for granted. The Smith system is used as a teaching method for DOT fleet safety training. It emphasizes to the driver to aim high in steering, get the big picture, and keep your eyes moving. This may seem like a simple and practical approach when you're going forward, but when backing, it's a different story. Inattentiveness, distractions, being rushed, and common carelessness are contributing factors in most backing accidents. Being distracted even for a few seconds can lead to a critical error when it comes to backing. When we're backing, we need to get the big picture so that we know what is behind us or what could possibly move into our backing path. Carelessness causes too many backing accidents resulting in injury or damage. Many of these accidents could have been prevented if individuals were more attentive and cautious. Failure to do so may compromise our safety and the safety of others around us.
Stop! Stop! Hey! Stop!
As a general rule, avoid backing unless you absolutely have to. When backing is required, use extreme caution and know what's behind you. Survey the area where backing is to occur as you pull in. Choose the best backing path and pull forward until you're properly aligned. Get out and look at your blind spots and check for adequate clearances in your backing path. Typically, your blind spot directly behind the dump truck can go back as far as 90 feet for workers standing. If that worker is stooped over or kneeling, as would be the case for someone inspecting the roadway, the driver's viewing distance using side mirrors increases even further. Worker cannot be seen in driver's side mirrors at 25 feet. Still can't be seen at 50 feet. Even at 75 feet, worker can't be seen. Finally, at 90 feet, the worker can be seen in side mirrors. You must always know what is directly behind you prior to backing. If a spotter is not available, complete a walk-around. Having a spotter is the preferred method. If a spotter is available, make sure you agree on hand signals to be used. Hand with palm up waved inwards means back slowly. A closed fist means stop. Your mirrors should be properly adjusted to see clearly without having to lean. Your spotter should be positioned so they are clearly visible in driver's side mirror. If not, stop and reposition the spotter. In order to hear what's around you, you should roll down the window and shut off the radio. Keep in mind that all motor vehicles on construction sites with an obstructed view to the rear must have a backup alarm. If your backup alarm is inoperable, get it repaired immediately. Remain alert and proceed slowly when backing. Inattentiveness, distractions, and carelessness are ingredients that may lead to a backing accident. You must be ready for that fateful instance prior to a potential accident. By staying alert, using caution, and watching your back, you can prevent backing accidents. If you see any problems when backing, stop, get out, and check your backing path. A little extra time may prove valuable in the long run. When using a spotter, make sure they are positioned so you can clearly see their hand signals. The spotter is your eyes and ears, but you are ultimately responsible if there is an accident. Try to avoid backing whenever possible. If necessary, survey the area as you pull into the proper position. Check your intended path. Check your clearances. Adjust your mirrors. Avoid distractions. Move slowly and cautiously. Always use a spotter if one is available. When using a spotter, agree on hand signals. And always be alert, aware, and cautious. Our DOT family needs employees like you to help keep our coworkers safe. You are under tremendous pressure and challenged to do your job in a safe, efficient manner. Please don't forget, on the job, as in life, always watch your back.
Okay, so we're going to move on. So now we're going to talk about directional drilling. This is one of the main types of work we do here at Americom. And so we're going to discuss the hazards with directional drilling. So the hazards that come into play when operating or working in or around a drill are your caught between loading, unloading. So if you're loading the drill on a trailer or off the trailer, we're talking about moving heavy equipment, and we need to be using a spotter. We need to make sure that we're not going to back that or load that piece of equipment and get something or someone caught between that piece of equipment. as we're moving it, we again want to use a spotter, make sure we're not going to strike anything or anybody with it. If the drill's being used, and we're drilling a bore or in the ground with the drill, it's got rotating, moving parts. You want to make sure you keep that area safe so that someone or something doesn't get drawn into the rotating parts, and is pulled into that machinery. Falls, the drills aren't that big, but we do have some drills that are fairly big, and we want to make sure that we're conscious of any falls that could come from working in or around those drills. Especially if we've excavated and there's an open hole in the ground, and there could be a potential to fall into that hole, just depending on how deep it is. We just, whether you're on the drill or near an open excavation, just be mindful of the potential that there is still a fall hazard there. So the manufacturer recommends that anytime you drill within 10 feet of an electrical line, the electric strike system must be properly set up, tested, and used. So the drill has an actual grounding cable on the back of the drill that you would actually extend out, and then you drive a grounding rod into the ground, and you connect that cable to the rod, and that grounds out the drill in the event and allows the strike system on the drill to recognize any contact with an electrical line or electrical hazard. Keep everyone away from the machine when drilling. If an electrical line is hit, the machine will become electrified or could become electrified. You must keep bystanders and other workers away back from the drill 6 feet. So the manufacturer recommends that you set up barricades within a 6-foot radius around the drill site where you're working. When drilling within 10 feet of an existing electrical line, the operator and tracker must wear electrically insulated boots. Gloves should be within reach of the operator in case he must exit the machine. So what that means is if you're on the drill and it hits an electrical line and the drill becomes energized, those electrically insulated boots are designed to protect the drill operator so that they can safely get off of that drill, and then the proper procedures can take place to contact the power company, de-energize that line, make that scene safe. The gloves should be worn before any movement is conducted on the drill if that drill does become energized. And then if there are any open excavations in and around the drill, we're required by OSHA to follow the trenching and excavation regulations, and I'll talk more about that here in the up and coming slides, or in the next slide actually. So excavations. An excavation is any man-made cut, cavity, trench, or depression in an earth surface that is formed by earth removal. A trench is a narrow excavation in relation to its length made below the surface of the ground. In general, the depth of a trench is greater than its width, and the width measured at the bottom is not greater than 15 feet. So please note, if a form or other structure installed or constructed in an excavation reduces the distance between the form and the side of the excavation to 15 feet or less, measured at the bottom of the excavation is also considered to be a trench. So what are the requirements? Utilities must be staked before you dig. We've already discussed that. You must conduct a soil test to determine the best type of protective system used. So a soil test, there's 4 different types of soil. There's solid rock, there's type A. Type A means it's undisturbed soil. It's never been touched before. Type B means it's solid, clay, hard soil, but you can tell it's been disturbed. And then Class C soil is your sandy, loamy soil, and basically has no consistency. You can't roll it up into a ball, or it just doesn't stick in any way, shape, or form. Excavations or trenches 5 feet or more in depth require benching, shoring, or trench boxes. So it requires some sort of protective system be utilized if the trench is deeper than 5 feet. Excavation or trenches 4 feet or more in depth must be monitored for hazardous energy. So what that means is if you've dug a trench near a sewer line and it's deeper than 4 feet or 4 feet or more actually, then you need to conduct a hazardous atmosphere test to make sure that none of those sewer gases are in that trench and would pose a hazard to the worker in that trench. Excavations or trenches 20 feet or more in depth must be evaluated by a registered professional engineer. So what that means is if it's 20 feet deep or more, before anybody can get into that trench or that hole, we need to have a registered professional engineer evaluate what protective systems we need in place before we do that. And if it's in and around utilities, again, we need to do hazardous atmospheric testing. Must have access egress in place, ladders, ramps, or stairways. So if you're in an excavation, you've got to be able to get out of it. So the regulations, OSHA regulations say you've got to have a ladder every 25 feet, or you've got to have a ramp built, or a staircase or stairway built into that excavation so employees can safely enter and exit that excavation. The regulations state that we must have a competent person on site. That's going to be your supervisor. And excavation and trenches should be inspected daily. So, you know, that's important because if we're working on a project for months at a time and we've got an open excavation, you know, if a rainstorm comes through, it could loosen that soil, it could cause a cave-in. That excavation needs to be inspected every day to ensure that the safety measures implemented are working and have not failed, and that, you know, the job is safe before we send someone into that excavation. Excavation and trenches should be, we must have an emergency action plan in place when we're conducting work in excavation or trenches. So we've already talked about emergency action plan. You know, what do we know where our resources are? Do we know who our first responders are? Do we know where our hospitals are? You know, do we have a means to, again, do we have a means to get someone in and out of that hole? You know, what are we going to do if there is a cave-in? So here's a slide that has two photographs of a good demonstration of a proper excavation with the proper safety measures in place. And then on the left, we have a photograph of an excavation where there's essentially no safety precautions in place. So, you know, I don't know about you, but I'm very nervous and scared for the gentleman on the left that's down in that trench. That soil looks like type C soil to me. Looks pretty soft, pretty sandy. And, you know, if there's no way that gentleman's going to get out of that hole if that caves in on him. On the right, you can see here they've got forms in place. The forms extend up higher than the excavation itself. And so if that excavation does collapse or cave in, those shields are going to protect anybody down in that hole. So this occurred in Alpine, Utah, just back in April. This was a man who died in a trench in Alpine, Utah that was, I believe, installing a swimming pool. You know, there was essentially no safety precautions in place, and as he was down in the hole, the trench collapsed and it killed him. So these things do happen, and they do happen here locally. And again, going back to some of the previous slides, if we're conducting work in and around excavation and trenches, and you know it's deeper than 5 feet and it doesn't appear safe, or you know there's water in the hole, or you're not comfortable with it, we need to stop, we need to evaluate, we need to get the proper protective measures in place to make sure that that trench or excavation is safe before we enter and perform any work. Okay, so we're going to move on to confined spaces. confined spaces are one of the most dangerous work areas in construction, and the OSHA regulations are very specific. But today, just because this is a new higher orientation safety training, we're just going to cover the basics of them. So first I'll define what a confined space is. Confined spaces have 3 criteria. 1, they're large enough for a worker to enter. They have limited means of entry or exit, and they're not designed for continuous human occupancy. Before workers can enter a confined space, employers must provide pre-entry planning, which includes having a competent person evaluate the worksite for the presence of confined space hazards, including permit required confined spaces. So just know that there's a difference between a permit required confined space and a non-permit required confined space. The difference between the two is if we're down in a vault or a hole and there's absolutely no hazards, we've monitored the environment, the atmospheric hazards, and we've identified there's no hazards. We've identified that the oxygen level is where it needs to be. If you look at number 3 here, hazardous atmospheres must be eliminated or engineering controls must be in place, and oxygen must be between 19.5% and 23.5% for it to be safe. So back to what I was saying is if we're in a vault or a hole and there's no hazards in place, and there's no electrical, there's no water, the oxygen is sufficient, then we potentially could call that a non-permit required space. But if we get into a vault or a hole and we identify that there's electrical in the hole, there's oxygen deficiency, there's maybe there's some caustic gas down in the hole, then that is a permit required confined space, and we're required to follow certain procedures at that point to render that confined space a safe environment to work in. That may require engineering controls, that may require administrative controls, and it may require extra personal protective equipment like an air respirator. So say there's chlorine gas in the bottom of that hole, then we may need to equip that worker with a fully contained air breathing apparatus or respirator so that he can breathe while he's down working in that hole. So going over this slide up in the top left here, once a space is classified as a permit required confined space, we're required under the OSHA regulations to identify and provide a safe means of entry and exit. Again, we have to monitor the confined space. Gas monitoring must be conducted before entering. The hazardous atmosphere must be eliminated, or engineering controls must be in place so that our oxygen is adequate. And again, just like I said, if the oxygen is not adequate, we need to utilize either ventilation methods or respiratory protection may be necessary if the hazards cannot be controlled. Elimination or control of all potential hazards in the space must be conducted. So before we go into any sort of a confined space, you must have an attendant monitoring the person working down in that confined space or hole the entire time they're down in there. And there should be a supervisor overseeing that operation as well. Now the supervisor can be the attendant, but basically the point here I'm trying to make is you have to have 2 people when you're working in a confined space, 2 people minimum. And again, you have your entrant, who is the person working down in the hole, and then you have your attendant, who is the person that's monitoring and watching that person down in the hole. That attendant can be the supervisor, and you must have a rescue plan in place in the event something goes wrong while you're working down in that confined space. So again, How are we going to get that person out of that hole if something goes wrong? You know, where's our emergency services? You know, can we communicate? We've got to be able to communicate with that person that's working down in the confined space or the manhole. And, you know, we've got to be able to notify and contact first responders if necessary. So I'm going to play a video here that shows a confined space that goes bad, and then we're going to talk about it. Now, as they're working in here, I want you to pay attention to the things that they're saying.
I wouldn't want to be in that ball right now. You kidding me? I know. Couldn't pay me enough to do that, Joel. You guys wonder why we check that? That didn't sound good. That's why we check torque on bolts, guys. Yeah, Joel, maybe you should step out for a minute. So that thing settles in. Yeah, no.
Okay, so I'm going to stop the video there. There's not much more to see after that. This video does have a happy ending. This worker does survive. He's just blown out of that hole and banged up pretty good, but he does survive. These gentlemen were working in a confined space or a manhole where there was steam pipes, and I think you could hear at the beginning that loud clunking sound. That was some sort of problem that was occurring with the steam pipes themselves. And eventually the pipe ruptured and blew him out of the hole. But more importantly, I want to discuss some of the things that they were saying. Now, at the beginning of the work, it looks like they had everything that they needed in place. They had their access, egress in place. You saw the ladder coming out of the hole. They had their ventilation in place. They had a tripod set up, and they had the gentleman hooked up to, with a safety harness, and that safety harness was hooked up to the tripod so they could winch him out if needed. They had a danger side in place. But more importantly, some of the things that they were saying, like, man, you couldn't pay me enough to be in that hole. Or, hey, Joel, maybe you shouldn't be down in that hole. Like, everybody needs to understand as you're watching this video that, if you're not comfortable with the work that's being conducted and you're making statements like that, then we need to be more decisive and just get that person out of the hole. As soon as someone's not comfortable with what's happening, a decision needs to be made, and made quickly, that we remove that person out of that environment. So I play this video to demonstrate, like, there shouldn't be any sort of maybes or, well, gosh, maybe that doesn't sound right, or, if it doesn't sound right, it doesn't look right, it doesn't feel right, get that person out of the hole, go back to the drawing board, reevaluate the confined space, we've obviously identified that there's some new hazards here. What is that clunking sound that we're hearing, and why is it making that sound? My point here is if you need to back out of a project or a job or the work that's being performed, and render it safe and reevaluate the hazards, even go back to the drawing board and fill out another JHA form and start over to make sure that confined space is safe, then that's what we want you to do. So it's kind of bothersome to me that these guys were saying those things, but yet still allowing that gentleman to work down in that confined space. So, you know, we need to be confident, we need to be decisive, and we, you know, again, if we're not comfortable with something, we need to get that person out of the hole, or we need to stop the work and make the project safe before we start or continue working. So we're going to touch briefly on crane operations. We don't do a lot of work here at Americom with crane operations, but we do have some cranes on the drills that we own and operate. So we are going to touch on this briefly. Crane ground conditions. The controlling entity must ensure that the ground conditions are safe for the crane to be assembled and used. Assembly, disassembly. Director determines if safe ground conditions are present. So that's basically the person in charge of, you know, whoever's running that train, whoever's operating that train or certified to use that train. They're in charge of making sure that it's set up properly and assembled properly, and that the area that they're working in is safe. Again, OSHA standards are that nobody is allowed to work under or near a crane as it's being operated. Cranes must remain a minimum of 10 feet from overhead high voltage lines. So there's that 10-foot rule again. Employer must assume that overhead high voltage lines are energized unless the utility confirms they are not. So again, if you see an overhead power line, you just assume it's energized unless, you know, someone in the company confirms it's not. And, you know, if you're going to assume that the overhead power line is energized, then, you know, we need to set up all the necessary precautions and safety measures that we've discussed previously. A competent person must inspect the crane prior to each shift. So that's typically going to be the crane operator, whoever is certified to use that crane. Operators must be certified by one of 4 entities: an accredited crane operator certification testing organization, an audited employer program, qualification by the U.S. military, or licensing by a government entity. Swing radius must be barricaded to prevent accidental contact. The employer must ensure that each signal person meets the standards qualification requirements. So, you know, just envision that you've got a crane in operation and you're lifting material from the ground from point A to point B. There's always going to be someone down on the ground that's rigging those materials and then providing hand signals to that crane operator so that material is moved safely. And again, those two are going to ensure that that zone crane area is cordoned off, and you know, that people can't access that area or conduct other work in that area while they're conducting crane operations. So we're about done here with the training. We've just got a few more slides. So we're going to talk about first aid and CPR. So provisions will be made prior to commencement of a project for prompt medical attention in case of serious injury. So again, that goes back to our emergency action planning. First aid is supplied with, will be easily accessible when required. So we've got to have our first aid equipment or first aid kit on the project. We got to know where it is, either in the truck or in the gang box. Proper equipment for prompt transportation of injured person to a physician or hospital or communication system for contacting necessary ambulance service will be provided. So what that means is we've got to be able to call 911. We've got to be able to call in first responders if needed. If we're in a rural area and our cell phones don't work, our radios don't work, then we've got to have other measures in place for prompt transportation of that worker to a medical facility. So again, that's part of your emergency action planning. Injured employees are to be transported to medical facilities by emergency medical services unless it's non-life threatening. If emergency medical service is not available in a timely manner, the injured employee will be transported to the nearest medical service in a company vehicle by a supervisor. In the absence of an infirmary, clinic, hospital, or physician that is reasonably accessible in terms of time and distance to the work site, which is available for the treatment of injured employees, a person who has a valid certificate in first aid training from the U.S. Bureau of Mines, American Red Cross, or equivalent training can be verified by documentation shall be available at the work site to render first aid. So we kind of talked about that once already. If you're in a remote area, we've got to have people on the site that are first aid trained and certified. In areas where 911 is not available, the telephone numbers of physicians, hospitals, or ambulances shall be conspicuously posted. First aid kits are readily available in all company vehicles or job sites and in the company office. First aid kits will consist of appropriate items and stored in weatherproof containers that meets the ANSWER standard. So all of our first aid kits that we have in our vehicles meet this standard, and they should have everything you need to take care of minor injuries. Bloodborne pathogens. If it is reasonably anticipated employees will be exposed to blood or other potentially infectious materials while using first aid supplies, employees should provide personal protective equipment, including but not limited to gloves, gowns, face shields, masks, and eye protection. So, you know, you obviously would want to protect yourself from bloodborne pathogens. You know, if you're going to want to put some gloves on, you know, if you maybe need to protect your clothing with a gown, a face shield, if, you know, you've got an arterial wound that's spurting, you obviously don't want to get that in your face or in your eyes, so you may need to wear a mask or some sort of a face shield. And the first aid kits that we have all of this stuff in it. Going over some more of our company policies, but they do directly relate to safety. So we're going to discuss our cell phone policy. Cell phone use is prohibited while conducting job responsibilities, so basically while you're on the job and you're working. Operating company vehicles or machinery. Hands-free devices may be utilized in company vehicles, but again, you should not be manipulating or using your phone with your hands while operating any sort of company vehicle or machinery. You should not be using your cell phone while standing within 10 feet of moving equipment or vehicles. We'd ask you to, you know, use your cell phone on your breaks and or, you know, before or after work. You know, whenever possible. We understand there's emergencies, but you know, try to limit your cell phone usage. Vehicle usage. You must have a valid driver's license or CDL to operate a company vehicle. You must conduct daily vehicle inspections. So you're going to be checking, you know, the mechanical issues with that vehicle, and then also checking all of your safety equipment on that vehicle. Your headlights, your turn signals, your hazard lights. Again, you're going to be making sure you have your first aid kit, a fire extinguisher. So you're going to ensure you have all required safety equipment in your vehicle. You know, keeping your vehicle clean at all times, that is a safety-related issue. If the cab of your vehicle is littered with garbage, it could pose a safety hazard while you're operating that vehicle. We wouldn't want you to, you know, get a empty plastic bottle or cup stuck underneath the gas pedal or the brake pedal and prohibit the operation of that vehicle. Report all maintenance or equipment problems immediately to your supervisor and through the company DVIR. If you receive a citation or a warning, whether it's in a company vehicle or a personal vehicle, you need to report that immediately to your supervisor. And again, no texting and driving. It's against company policy, and it's illegal. You can receive a citation for that. Again, Bluetooth devices are acceptable. So I'm going to talk now about our accident reporting plan. All accidents or property damage shall be reported immediately to your supervisor. If it's a life-threatening emergency, we want you to contact 911 first. We want you to take care of that worker, get first responders coming, get them off to the hospital first. But if it's a non-life-threatening injury or property damage or a utility strike, you need to call and report that to the injury accident hotline here at this number right here, 801-892-0550. Non-life-threatening injuries will be evaluated and predetermined at a predetermined medical facility. If it's a non-life-threatening injury, we do not want you going to just any hospital or emergency room. Americom has contracted with several medical facilities only, already, and we, a manager or supervisor or even myself will transport you to that prearranged medical facility. Now again, if it's a life-threatening emergency and you've got to call 911, then they just go to the nearest hospital, and we're not worried about this. But again, if it's a non-life-threatening injury, like it's a cut and you need stitches, or you've got a sprained ankle, you want to call the injury accident hotline again within 15 minutes, and then the management or myself will make arrangements for you to go to a predetermined medical facility. If you do not call and report injuries or accidents via the injury accident hotline, you can receive a 3-day unpaid suspension for failure to follow this policy. We want you to report any injury at all. And that's just meant to protect you. So even if it's a cut that doesn't need stitches and you can just use your first aid kit and provide first aid, we want you to call and report that. And that, again, is meant to protect you so that in the event that cut becomes infected or doesn't heal right, then the workers' comp, our workers' comp insurance will still cover you on that. If you get injured on a job and it only requires first aid and you don't report it, and then you try to come back after the fact and report it, then your claim could be denied by workers' comp. The state law says we have 7 days to report those to the Utah Department of Labor. So again, that's why we have this policy. It's not about Big Brother controlling you or anybody. It's about protecting you and making sure that you're covered if you need it. All fatalities will be reported to OSHA within 8 hours, and any inpatient hospitalization, amputation, or loss of an eye should be reported to OSHA within 24 hours. And here's the number below that you would call to do that. So we're at the end of the safety orientation. Just know that safety is everyone's responsibility. If you see something, say something. You can contribute to saving yourself or your coworkers from injury and or death. That's really important. Just know that you have that ability to stop that work, make decisions, and know that you have a voice when it comes to safety. We want everybody to be safe out there. Americom truly does care about your safety. And again, you're welcome to call me if you have any questions or concerns. If you see something that's unsafe out in the field and is being ignored, I want you to call me immediately. And there'll be no repercussions towards you for making that phone call or notifying me. So again, thank you for attending Americom's new Higher Safety Orientation. Here's my contact information below. This is my desk or my email. I'm going to go back to the previous slide that has all my information again with my cell phone number. So you have it. Make sure you have it one more time. So again, this is my cell phone's there on the top, and then my desk number, and then the injury accident hotline. So again, feel free to take a picture of this. You can shoot me an email, you can send me a text, you can call me, whatever you're comfortable with. Again, my goal as a safety manager is to ensure that you know, all of Americom's work practices are safe, and you know, we want to have an open communication with everybody in the company when it comes to safety, and it's meant to make everybody better and safer and more productive. Again, I truly believe that working safely is the fastest way to work. It you know, prevents injuries. You know, and it keeps the job from stopping or slowing down. So with that, that's the conclusion of this training. Thank you again, and have a great day.